Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Jam. I'm glad you're here with me today. Today's episode is called The World is Bigger Than You Think. Now, this is a special episode because this episode is about my recent trip to Europe, a trip that honestly wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for my good friend DJ Moore, aka Coach Moore. So, before I get into anything else, I want to show appreciation to him and give a huge shout out to my boy DJ Moore. Coach Moore invited me on this trip as a chaperone with EF Tours. We were supposed to be going to London, Paris, and Rome. And that's something that I will forever be grateful for because out of everyone he could have asked, he chose me. And I don't take that for granted. It's an opportunity to experience places that I had only seen in the pictures, on movies, in history books, and for the opportunity to go and experience this with not only him and his wife, but a great group of students, recent graduates, parents, and other travelers. So, Coach Moore, if you're listening, man, I appreciate you again for making this trip possible. Now, with all that being said, our trip didn't start out the way we planned. We flew from Dallas to Toronto, no problems. We were excited about the next stop because it was London. Well, then that's when things got interesting. So we get to the airport, and there's a delay in our plane. So we hang out a little bit, gets delayed again. We finally get a chance to board the plane. And we push back from the gate. We're taxiing down the runway. And then a lady passenger had some sort of panic attack. And she wanted to get off the plane immediately. I've never experienced that before in all my years of traveling. But here we are. So we go back to the gate. We waited and waited. And then eventually they announced that the flight had been canceled because of maintenance issues. So instead of waking up in London, we woke up in Toronto. We lost an entire day in London. But you know what? Sometimes, life reminds you that you can't control everything. You can't always control what happens, but what you can do is control how you respond. Coach Moore, he was the example of that from the very beginning. Even with all the delays and unexpected changes, he stayed positive. He was calm. He was focused, and the whole group pretty much matched that energy. I believe that, the attitude that he had, it set the tone for our entire group. And that's why everybody handled it as well as they did. While we were in Toronto, our tour director back in Europe named Patrick, shout out Patrick, was working behind the scenes in Europe, adjusting our itinerary and doing everything he could to make sure this trip went smooth because none of this was his fault. So I appreciate his efforts and everything he did on the other side of the world. And, when you look back at it, that unexpected delay, that became part of the story. So like I said before, this trip was through EF Tours with students, graduates, parents, and people from all different backgrounds. One thing I realized immediately was traveling isn't just about taking pictures. It's about changing perspectives. The world is so much bigger than our everyday life and our everyday routine. Sometimes we get comfortable in our hometowns, our jobs, our schedules, that we forget that the entire world is filled with different people, different cultures, different histories, and different ways of living. This trip reminded me of that. So today I just want to tell you the story, share a few lessons, and hopefully encourage somebody listening to go see the world, even if it's one place at a time. Enjoy the show. Okay, so let's start with London, England. Even though we lost a day, London still left a huge impression. Our time was condensed, but we packed in as much as we could. One of the first things we saw was Buckingham Palace. Think about that. That's where King Charles III lives when he's in London. For Americans, it's kind of hard to comprehend that or put that together because we don't have a royal family. So standing outside those gates and realizing, people actually are supposed to live here. And that's pretty cool. We also saw the famous guards standing outside, and just like you see in the pictures or on the videos, they really don't smile that much. Another thing we did while we were in London was we rode the London Eye, which, as we would see it, a huge Ferris wheel, and it gives you plenty observation of London. Some of the best views that you could even imagine. You see the Thames River, Big Ben, Parliament, the bridges that go across the city, and you actually get to see how big London really is. Sometimes seeing a city from above gives you an appreciation that you don't get when you see it at street level. Then later on that day, we went on a tour that is completely different. We went on a Jack the Ripper tour. If you don't know, Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer in like East London in the 1800s. I think it was 1888 to be exact. And over 130 years later, people still don't know exactly who he was. So, walking those old streets, hearing those stories, seeing the alleyways, it almost felt like stepping back in time. And that's something that Europe does really well. History doesn't just sit inside museums. It's everywhere. It's in the neighborhoods, it's in the streets, and you walk through it. You can drive through it. So as we finished up London, it had to be condensed into that one day, and we got a lot out of it. We then had to get ready to go to Paris, France. So the next day we wake up and we went in what I like to call the train under the ocean. So this moment absolutely blew my mind. We boarded what is known as the Eurostar train. We literally rode a train underneath the English Channel. Think about that. We left one country, the UK, traveled underwater, and arrived in another country, which was France. The channel is about 30 miles long, and 23 of those miles is actually underwater. As a young person, if somebody would have told me that I'd be riding a train underneath the ocean, I probably would have laughed at them. But there I was. Sometimes the world is stranger and cooler than any of us could ever imagine. So with all that being said, we ended up in France. We arrived in Paris, France. And let's be honest, if you ask most people in the world, would you like to go to Paris? Almost everybody would say yes. Even my daughter talks about wanting to visit Paris someday. And now I understand why. One of the first places we visited was the Notre Dame Cathedral. After it had a fire like in 2019, it was awesome to see how they restored it, and it was incredible. The architecture, the stained glass, the craftsmanship, the stories inside, the history inside. It's hard to believe that people built something like that hundreds of years ago. Then we visited one of my favorite surprises of the whole trip. We went to a bookstore called Shakespeare and Company. It's one of the most famous hidden independent bookstores. They say writers like Ernest Hemingway spent time there. But here's what really made me smile. Like I said, I was with a group of students, and we all went in, and I picked up the Iceberg Slim book that I first saw. But what really made me smile and made me feel good is that almost every student that I was with bought a book. In a world where everyone talks about kids spending too much time on their phones, seeing young people excited about books in bookstores, that was awesome. Sometimes, hope for the future comes in small moments like that. They also like the water station outside of the store, which is a different story for a different day. Then, of course, when you think Paris, France, you think the Eiffel Tower. Some landmarks in the world, they get overhyped, but this wasn't one of them. This one lived up to it. It lived up to everything that I had seen on television. I mean, seeing it in person and seeing it during the day was amazing. Seeing it at night, a completely different experience for the same structure. If you don't know, every evening the tower lights up with beautiful golden lights. Then at a scheduled time after dark, it sparkles for several minutes. Watching it on a boat from the river, with everyone stopping to admire it, was one of those moments that you never forget. You realize that people from every country, every language, every background, all stop for a few minutes to appreciate something beautiful. Sometimes, beauty doesn't need a translation. Everybody from different backgrounds can really appreciate it. So after that, we were able to ride the metro back to the hotel, which is an experience in itself, to be able to ride a train through Paris, France. So the next day we went to the Louvre. If you've never been, it's almost impossible to explain how big it is. You could really spend days there, which our tour guide told us we needed to have a plan. Of course, everybody's big thing is to see the Mona Lisa, and some said it was smaller than they expected. It was actually a little bit bigger than I expected. And there are a lot of people around it trying to take pictures of it. And it's still one of those paintings that you feel obligated to see at least once in your life. The Louvre isn't just about paintings, though. Thousands of sculptures, ancient artifacts, history from civilizations all around the world. It is almost impossible to see everything. Paris also reminded me of how much history is packed into one city. We passed where Napoleon Bonaparte is buried beneath this huge dome, and whether you love him or hate him, he changed European history forever. We also passed the tunnel where Princess Diana had her car crash in 1997. Standing near the places you've only heard about on the news or read about in books makes everything feel more real. Then the next day we fly to Rome, Italy. And all I have to say is, Rome may have been my favorite stop. Walking those streets, you can feel history. Everywhere you turn, there's another church, another monument, another building that's older than the United States. That's crazy to think about. The Roman Colosseum, of course, that was on my bucket list of destinations to go in my life. Pictures don't prepare you. Television doesn't prepare you. Standing there, looking at something built nearly 2,000 years ago, it really takes your breath away. It once held around 50,000 spectators, which doesn't seem like a lot nowadays. People came there to watch gladiator contests, animal hunts, public spectacles, and I'm telling you, this place, the engineering, the architecture, it's unbelievable. You realize people accomplished incredible things way before modern technology. And then right beside the Colosseum is the Roman Forum. This was the heart of ancient Rome. Politics happened there. Business happened there. Religious ceremonies happened there. And you can still walk among those ruins today. Nearby is the temple of Julius Caesar, marking the place where the Romans honored him after his assassination. You're literally standing where history happened, not reading about it, standing in it. Rome has so much more. The Pantheon, one of the best preserved buildings from ancient Rome. Its massive dome is still considered an engineering masterpiece. The Spanish Steps, filled with people relaxing, talking, laughing, just enjoying life. The Trevi Fountain, people tossing those coins over their shoulder, hoping they'll return to Rome someday. Whether you believe in traditions or not, it's fun seeing people participate in something that has been done for generations. Rome feels alive. It feels old, but yet alive. Then came the Vatican, the smallest country in the world, yet one of the most influential places on earth. Walking in the St. Peter's, it's hard to find words. Everywhere you look, there's artwork, history, faith, Michelangelo's work, including the breathtaking ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It's something you simply have to be there for. It's something you simply have to experience. No photographs, no documentary can truly prepare you. Some things just have to be seen. And there's one thing I kept noticing throughout the trip. Life is different here. Not better, not worse, different. People drive differently. Pedestrians are treated differently, especially when other people are driving. Restaurants move at a different pace. Even the water bottles have attached caps so they stay connected to the bottle instead of becoming litter. The water stations throughout Rome, they blew my mind because the water was always cold coming out of the ground or the fountain. Public transportation is everywhere. People walk more. In France, people bike more. You start realizing there isn't only one way to live. Sometimes we assume the way we're used to doing things is the only way. Travel reminds you that that's simply not true. This whole trip reminded me of something. It's perfectly okay to love where you live. I love America. I love Texas. I love home. But loving home shouldn't stop us from appreciating somewhere else. You don't have to choose one or the other. The world is full of incredible places, amazing people, different cultures, different foods, different ideas, different perspectives. And every place has something that it can teach you. Travel has a way of making you realize how small your problems sometimes are. It stretches your mind. It challenges your assumptions. It builds gratitude. You begin appreciating what you have while appreciating how others live. And that's a beautiful combination. So if you're listening today, maybe you've never left your state. Maybe you never left your country. Maybe you've always wanted to travel but keep saying, one day. Don't wait forever. Start saving. Start planning. Even if it's one trip every few years. Even if it's somewhere close. Go see something you've never seen before. Meet people you've never met. Hear stories you've never heard. Because the world really is a big place. And there's so much beauty waiting outside of our comfort zones. This trip reminded me that history isn't just something we learn in school. It's something we can experience. And when you experience it, it changes you. I came home sleepy. I came home with a bunch of pictures. I came home with memories that I'll never forget. But more importantly, I came home with a greater appreciation for history, for people, for culture, and for this incredible world we've been blessed to live in. So wherever you're listening from today, I hope you get out there, explore, learn, ask questions, appreciate different people, appreciate different cultures, because at the end of the day, the world is bigger than you think. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Jam the Podcast. If this episode encouraged you, inspired you, or reminded you to book the trip you've been putting off, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep exploring. If not, you may be jammed. Thanks for listening.